Stop. Don't scroll past this. Because what I'm about to tell you in the next few minutes, most people will never hear in their entire lifetime. And the ones who do hear it, they are never the same again. You have been living someone else's life. Not because you chose to. But because from the moment you were born, the world started building a version of you, made from their fears, their limitations, their unhealed wounds, and handed it to you and said, "This is who you are." And you believed them. We all did. But here is the thing that breaks my heart, and I mean this: you have been walking around carrying a name, a story, a set of fears that were never even yours to begin with. Every time you said, "I'm not good enough," that was not your voice. Every time you shrank yourself to fit into a room, that was not your truth. That was a cage. And you have been calling it your identity. Because the real you, the version that existed before the world got to you, is still in there. Untouched. Unbroken. Burning. And right now, something in your chest is responding to these words because it recognizes the truth. That is not coincidence. That is your awakening trying to begin. There is a moment, and I want you to think back to it, where you stopped being yourself and started being what everyone else needed you to be. You might not remember the exact day. But your soul does. Your body does. That quiet ache you carry every single morning when you wake up and something inside you whispers, "This is not it, that is not weakness." That is the truest, most honest part of you screaming to be heard. You were handed a script the moment you arrived in this world. Your parents gave you some lines. Your teachers gave you more. Society wrote the rest. And before you were old enough to question any of it, before you even had the words, you had already memorized every single page. You learned what was safe to feel and what had to be buried. You learned which parts of yourself made people comfortable and which parts needed to disappear. And so you buried them. The wildness. The sensitivity. The dreams that felt too big to say out loud. The gifts that nobody around you could recognize because they had buried their own. You packed all of it down deep, smiled when you were supposed to smile, performed when you were supposed to perform, and you called it growing up. But it was not growing up. It was shrinking down. And here is what nobody ever told you: the cost of abandoning yourself is not paid all at once. It is paid slowly, quietly, in years. It shows up as the exhaustion that sleep cannot fix. It shows up as the loneliness you feel even in a room full of people who love you. It shows up as that invisible ceiling you keep hitting no matter how hard you work, no matter how much you achieve, no matter how perfectly you play the role you were assigned. Because success built on a false identity will always feel empty. Relationships built around a version of you that isn't real will always feel lonely. And no amount of external achievement can fill the internal void that opens up when you lose connection with who you actually are. This is the silent epidemic nobody talks about. This is the wound hiding underneath every distraction, every addiction, every endless scroll through someone else's highlight reel at midnight. But here is what I need you to understand, and I need you to let this land somewhere deep inside you: none of that is a life sentence. The fact that you are still here, still searching, still watching, still feeling that pull towards something more real and more true, that means the real you never gave up on you. Not once. Even when you gave up on yourself, that deeper part of you kept the fire alive. It kept whispering. It kept waiting. And it brought you to exactly this moment, this video, these words. Let me tell you something that took most people decades to understand, and I want you to hear it right now, in this moment, before another year passes. Every single mask you wear was built for survival. Not weakness. Not fakeness. Survival. The version of you that learned to be quiet in a loud house, that was intelligence. The version of you that learned to smile through pain so nobody would worry, that was love. The version of you that made yourself smaller so others could feel bigger, that was compassion turned inward like a blade. But here is the tragedy that nobody warned you about. The masks you wore to survive your past are now slowly suffocating your future. What protected you as a child is imprisoning you as an adult. And the most painful part, the part that makes this so devastatingly hard, is that you have worn these masks for so long that you genuinely cannot remember where the mask ends and where you begin. You have confused your armor for your identity. You have mistaken your wounds for your personality. Think about how you behave when someone gets too close to the real you. Think about how quickly you change the subject when a conversation touches something true. Think about how fast you reach for your phone, for food, for noise, for anything, the moment silence gets loud enough for you to actually hear yourself. That is not a coincidence. That is a system you built. A perfect, unconscious, airtight system designed to keep the real you hidden and safe from a world that once made it feel dangerous to be seen. And I am not here to judge that system. I am here to tell you that it worked. It kept you alive. It kept you functioning. It carried you through things that should have broken you completely, and it didn't, because you were stronger than anyone ever gave you credit for. But that same system, the one that saved you, is now the very thing standing between you and the life you were actually born to live. Because you cannot build something real on a foundation of pretending. You cannot love deeply while hiding completely. You cannot step into your true purpose while performing a character someone else wrote for you. Here is the question that should shake you to your core right now: who would you be if you were not afraid? Not the answer you give in job interviews. Not the version that sounds spiritual or impressive. I mean deep down, in the 3 a.m. version of you, in the version that exists before the world wakes up and starts demanding things from you. Who is that person? What do they want? What have they been waiting to say? What dream have they been keeping alive with nothing but a fragile, stubborn, beautiful refusal to fully let go? Because that person, that raw, unfiltered, unperformed version of you, is not a fantasy. They are not who you used to be before life hardened you. They are who you have always been underneath everything life piled on top of you. And every time you have ever felt truly alive, truly lit up from the inside, truly seen, truly free, even if just for one single moment, that was not luck. That was the real you breaking through the surface, gasping for air, reminding you that it still exists and it has never once stopped fighting for you. There comes a moment in every person's life where the weight of who they are pretending to be becomes heavier than the fear of becoming who they actually are. You may have already felt it. Maybe it came on a normal Tuesday when you sat in your car and could not make yourself go inside. Maybe it came at the peak of something that was supposed to make you happy and instead you felt a hollow emptiness that terrified you because you had no name for it. That breaking point is not your destruction, that shattering feeling is not the end of you, it is the end of the false you, and those are two completely different things. The caterpillar does not experience transformation as beautiful. Inside the cocoon it dissolves completely into something formless and terrifying. And then from that absolute dissolution, something that could never have existed before begins to take shape. Every identity crisis you survived was not a sign you were broken, it was proof you were growing beyond a version of yourself too small to contain who you were becoming. Every relationship that collapsed, every career that stopped feeling meaningful, every dream you quietly outgrew, none of that was loss. All of it was your soul refusing to stay in spaces built for someone you no longer are. And your soul is not gentle when it outgrows something, it burns the old structure down so the new one has room to rise. That feels like chaos from the inside, but it is actually the most intelligent, sacred process a human being can go through. You cannot take the old you into the new life, the fears that defined you, the stories that limited you, the identity built from survival rather than truth. They have to stay behind. And that feels like dying. It is supposed to feel like dying. Because something is dying, just not you. The costume is dying, the performance is ending, and the survival version of you that fought so hard for so long is finally being allowed to rest. What remains when all of that falls away is something so pure and so undeniably real that it will take your breath away the very first time you feel it. This is not your ending. This is the first honest moment of your entire life. Nobody sat you down when you were young and told you the most important truth about your existence. Nobody looked you in the eyes and said, "You are not your name, you are not your mistakes, you are not the sum of every bad thing that ever happened to you." Nobody told you that the shame you carried was never yours to carry. Nobody told you that the limitations you accepted as facts were simply other people's fears dressed up in the language of love and concern. And so you grew up building your entire identity on a foundation of things that were never true about you to begin with. Here is what is actually true about you, and I need you to stay with me because this is the part that changes everything. You are not a human being having a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. And that distinction is not a poetic phrase to put on a wall, it is the most radical, life-altering truth you will ever encounter. Because if you are spirit first, then nothing that happened to your human story can define the totality of what you are. Your trauma is not your identity. Your past is not your destiny. The version of you that was rejected, abandoned, overlooked, and underestimated, that version was never the complete picture. It was one chapter being mistaken for the entire book. And the most devastating thing a human being can do is close themselves off to the remaining chapters because the first ones were painful. You are not a finished story. You are a story that is just now finding its real voice. Think about every person in history who changed the world, every single one of them had a moment where the world told them they were nothing. Every one of them had people who laughed, doubted, dismissed, and walked away. And the only difference between them and the millions who gave up is not talent, not luck, not privilege. It is simply this: they chose to believe the voice inside over every voice outside. They chose the truth of what they felt they were over the opinion of what others said they were. And that same choice is sitting in front of you right now, not tomorrow, not after you fix yourself, not after life gets easier. Right now, exactly as you are, with every scar and every doubt and every unhealed corner still intact. Because awakening does not wait for perfect conditions. It does not arrive when you finally have it all together. It arrives in the wreckage, in the uncertainty, in the middle of the mess, because that is precisely where the real you has the most room to emerge. You were never meant to fit in. You were never meant to shrink. You were never meant to spend your one precious life performing a character built from other people's comfort zones. You were meant to crack open, to expand, to become something so authentically and unapologetically yourself that your very presence gives other lost souls permission to do the same. That is not arrogance, that is your actual purpose on this earth. Every single thing that has ever happened to you, every loss, every failure, every night you cried so hard you forgot what you were even crying for, every moment you felt invisible, every door that closed in your face, every person who left, every dream that seemed to die, none of it was punishment. None of it was proof that you were not enough. All of it, every single piece of it, was preparation. The universe does not break its most powerful souls by accident. It breaks them on purpose, with precision, with love, because the only way to access the depth that lives inside you is to shatter the shallow version that was sitting on top of it. And now I want you to do something that might be the most important thing you do today. I want you to stop, just for this moment, and place your hand on your chest. Feel that. That heartbeat that has never once skipped a single beat for you, that has kept going through every breakdown, every betrayal, every moment you thought you could not survive. That is not just biology. That is loyalty. That is the universe itself refusing to let you go because it knows what you are still here to become. And it has never once lost faith in you, not even when you lost all faith in yourself. This is the part where most people nod along, feel something move inside them, and then close the video and go back to the same life. And I understand that, change is terrifying, the familiar is comfortable even when it is suffocating, and the unknown feels like a cliff edge rather than a doorway. But I am asking you today to be different. Not perfect. Not fearless. Just different enough to take one honest step toward the version of you that has been waiting with infinite patience on the other side of your fear. Because that version of you is not a fantasy, they are a frequency. And every time you choose honesty over performance, every time you choose rest over people-pleasing, every time you choose your own voice over the noise of the crowd, you are tuning yourself to that frequency. You are closing the distance between who you have been pretending to be and who you have always actually been. And that distance, no matter how vast it feels right now, can be crossed. It has been crossed by people with far less and far more broken than you. People who had every reason to give up and chose instead, in one quiet defiant moment, to begin again. You are not too late. You are not too damaged. You are not too far gone. The fact that you can still feel, that these words are landing somewhere real inside you, that something in your chest is responding, that your eyes are still reading these lines, that is your proof. Dead things do not ache for resurrection. Only living things feel the pull toward more life. And you, right now, are feeling it. Which means the fire is still burning. Which means the story is still being written. Which means today, this exact unremarkable beautiful ordinary day, can be the day everything begins to change. So here is my final word to you, and I mean this from the deepest place I know how to speak from. Stop waiting for permission to be who you are. Stop shrinking to fit spaces that were never built for your full size. Stop apologizing for the intensity of your feeling, the depth of your longing, the size of your dream. The world does not need another perfect performance of someone else's idea of acceptable. The world needs you, the real you, the raw you, the fully alive and unapologetically present you. That is not just your right. That is your responsibility. That is your awakening. And it starts right now.